Okay, for people joining this live stream, we are doing a language completeness and consistency meeting, getting ready for the 12.2 release of Wolfram language. At least I think this is mostly 12.2 stuff. Am I right that it's mostly 12.2 stuff?
The first three are, well, the first two are definitely 12.2. The third one is sort of borderline, and the last one is not.
Okay, all right. Options mode, what the heck is all of this?
Right. So this was this was one of the ways to customize the behavior of check arguments and arguments options, where you have optional positional arguments, but there might
the issue. Yeah, right.
There might be rules inside.
Optional positional arguments. So longest and shortest basically has to do with the pattern from the right-hand end of the argument sequence.
Right. So the default behavior is if it matches options queue or options pattern, I mean, then it's considered an option specification and grouped with the options rather than the positional arguments. With options mode goes to shortest, it checks, well, is this actually a known option for this function, and makes the decision based on that.
But then it's not shortest and longest. It has different names.
Well, those are the names we came up with.
But maybe that's not the right description. So, I mean, let's look at the check arguments page. What the heck is this options mode?
The thing we're discussing?
Oh, keys can be used for the association. Okay, so this is an association.
Right.
Okay, but so there's different issues here, which is treat all unknown trailing options. So what's the question here? The question is, so this is...
Right. So if you have, so the behavior we have used since Oyvind created the internal version of this option in version 6 probably for the string guys, is if well, in the case where you just have a single option, it's unambiguous. If it's, right, is this option name a known option name for this function, or is it not? If it is, then it's an option. If it's not, then it's just an arbitrary rule you feed in as a positional argument. The problem comes, what happens when you have a list of rules? And so now you have a combination. And so what Oyvind did was essentially use an OR sort of rule. So an empty list is a positional argument, not an option specification, despite the fact that it does match options pattern, but that's sort of important in all sorts of use cases. And the case where you have a mixture of known and unknown options, it's treated as an option specification, but it'll just give a message saying, well, and you've given me an unknown option.
Okay, what is it that you want to do here?
What I want to do is, what I am proposing is that we, for lists of things, we still consider an empty list a positional argument, but a list of rules is only considered is considered an optional argument and not an option specification unless all of the left-hand sides are known options to the function, which is a slight change in behavior, but on the other hand, it fixes examples like the one that's shown there with the message from string replace.
Look, I think we should segregate these things more, in more, I mean, longest and shortest is not really the right characterization. There's more to it.
How so?
Well, I mean, you're saying whether they're enclosed in a list, whether they're not enclosed in a list, all these kinds of things.
Well, but no, because longest and shortest refers to which positions. Are you taking the longest possible sequence of option specs or the shortest ones?
Okay.
Right. We could, if you wanted, I'm not a priori, I'm not a priori opposed to changing the name, but I think that you're slightly mixing the issues because you are focusing on what an individual thing is considered.
What is the decision we're trying to make here?
Well, it's like I said, do we treat, in this case, where we have a known option and an unknown option in a list, does that get categorized as a positional argument or as an option spec? Which is a change in behavior, but I think it's generally an improvement.
Okay, I think we should do whatever you think is right.
Okay.
With these particular names, and if we need to break it in more detail later, we'll put more pieces in the association and define it more precisely.
Right, and you can see the possible new description that's the third bullet point, I think, for this was actually Ian's suggestion, but I think it's a good way.
Which one?
The possible new document, which is supposed to be new documentation. So that's the proposed new description for these two values.
Treat anything other than one or more known options. Why don't you say treat anything other than known options as position?
Because that's ambiguous. So, all right, right. Can I share for a second? Maybe I'll.
No, I believe you. We're in the tail of the animal. This is fine.
I think the issue, if I'm remembering right, is what happens if you have known option followed by unknown option followed by known option. I think the point is that the current code says, "Oh, I see a known option," and so treats everything from that point.
Why don't you have an additional?
No, that's wrong.
Oops,
Steven, seriously,
okay. You can share. Hold on one second. Let me just sorry, I just have to find the right place to give you control here. Go ahead.
All right. Okay. So, and here I'll make my font much larger, hopefully. So, oops. All right. So, right. Suppose we have F of, A, and then we have, a known goes to val, and unknown goes to val. Well, this case is unambiguous because this is not a known option. So this is a positional argument, and therefore everything to the left.
At the end. Now put another known at the end, and then the question is, what is? Go ahead.
No, that's not the issue. This case is also unambiguous. Why does that get small all of a sudden? This case is also unambiguous because you start at the right. This is a known option spec. So this is, so this is an option spec. This is a positional argument. Therefore, everything to the left is a positional argument. With options mode goes to longest, then all of these guys are treated as options because you take the longest string starting from the right. Where you run into trouble is this case. you have both a known and a unknown guy in a single slot. Because options pattern doesn't just match sequences of rules.
Okay, fine. So what do you want to do in that case?
So in this case, I want to change the behavior so that this is only considered, will now be considered a positional argument, because not everything.
Unless you say longest.
Right. And the default is longest, because the default is don't look at the names, just look at options pattern.
Look, I think this should be sliced more thinly. I think there are different cases here, but I think it's okay to make that change right now, especially since this function has never been seen in the system context before. So I think it's okay to do that, but I would like to flag the fact that I think there are probably some other settings that will be useful.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
And maybe Itai, just for us that use this thing a lot in the internal context, is there a document anywhere that stressed any difference that might be introduced in the system function compared to what was before?
There is no difference. The one function takes both. Right. So basically, longest is basically what used to be arguments, or what still is arguments in the internal context. And shortest is what is arguments with rules in the internal context. And
okay. Thank you.
Yes. So basically, we've packaged everything, the 7 different functions into one sort of nice interface.
Okay, let's move on.
So the knitting, you skipped over the knitting. This was supposed
to... I need to do it?
Well, you said you wanted to review it when you did enclose and confirm, but then apparently you had some meeting with just Christopher and none of us knew about it. So
right. Okay. All right. Let's see. Package bulletproofing. Does it really belong here? Package development. I'm not sure it belongs. Does it belong in bulletproofing?
Well, I guess what's the difference? But this is a way to, make
check arguments certainly.
Yeah, right. I mean, it certainly makes your, issues more useful messages, etc.
Oh, actually, we had a thing down here. Well, that was put in by Ian.
Right.
Okay. Let's untentative that for a second. Let's take a look at that. Does it return and evaluate?
No, it's not on its own. So I think that description is misleading. I think
check
just check for and issue messages for incorrect arguments or options would be a correct description.
What about define a function?
There's no defining of any function.
No.
It's not defining a function. It's just doing the checking.
Yeah.
What does this do?
Right. This is the thing that splits it into
separate arguments and options for a function.
Yep.
Okay.
And he put in sort of a different description here. So if we want to compare.
Verify.
Oh, because it's an options management, which sort of makes sense.
Right. Seems okay to me.
Okay.
Have we done see alsos for all these things?
Yep.
Okay, good. All right, let's move on. Excluded contexts.
Okay, so this is for the most part, I mean, there's a little question a couple of minor questions asked, but this is mainly to make sure everybody's in agreement about where we are and where we're going. Right, so we've changed full definition, so it doesn't, right, so full definition does two things. Full definition gets the definitions of a symbol, but then it also pulls in the definitions of everything that appears in there. And it used to have one rule, which was, well, don't pull in a symbol if it's protected or read protected. And now we've added a second rule, which says, well, don't pull it in if it's in one of these internal contexts. And you can sort of control that.
Okay.
Okay,
so the question is, how does this dovetail with the autocomplete stuff?
The autocomplete stuff is manually curated, whereas this is semi-auto generated. It could, I think it probably, the list of exclusions does exist as an internal symbol. And so
so excluded context arrow automatic could do the internal thing. Could do that default thing.
Right, and that's what it does.
Okay, fine. But so I would like to complain, and there's Lou here. I would like to complain about the treatment of in the autocomplete stuff. Is Lou here or not?
Lou
I
is
am here,
but although he's not primarily responsible for that, so
Well, who is?
Tom Sherlock.
Right. I can convey a message if needed.
Well, I've already had this discussion. I know I've just been told, oh, it's all too difficult, but that's not good enough.
I mean, it could certainly.
The truth is, I should never myself see stupid contexts that I know perfectly well shouldn't be there. Right?
Right.
And I don't understand why I am. And I don't know whether it's a procedures problem where people are not communicating this is an internal context, whether it's incorrect exporting from packages or what it is.
So right now, the list is manually curated. So if it's not well, no, that's not completely true because things like dumb contexts are automatically excluded. I'm hearing background from somebody.
Could we please?
How are you?
So
wait a minute. Could somebody mute themselves, or I'm going to start?
Dan, you need to mute yourself.
Not the pipes between the walls.
okay.
I just muted him.
All right. Right. So anything in a dump context or a private context is automatically excluded. If somebody creates a new context which doesn't match that pattern, then it needs to be added to the front end list. Now, this list, the list I have is sort of a more complete list.
So backing up a second, we've got development and we've got release engineering, and we've got conventions which may or may not have been followed.
Right.
Right. Okay. So first question is, do we know what the conventions are? Can we determine from the complete source tree what are all the contexts mentioned in the source tree? We should be able to determine that, right?
Maybe.
Come on. I mean, we just do a search for the begins.
Well, you have to be aware of two things. You have to be aware of the new package format, and you have to be aware of packlets, right?
And you also need to be aware of the fact that a begin can be a backtick, can start with a backtick, in which case.
I understand what you're saying. What I'm saying is what we need to do is inventory all of those things because we're still failing on these autocompletes, right? So at some point we're going to have to do some real work. And what I would recommend that we do is to decide on a convention and then implement that convention.
Right. But I mean,
Okay. So, I mean, who is it going to take to actually do that? So it requires going through the source tree, and identifying those things.
Right, but I don't think just going through the source tree is enough, right? Because some of the right some things are documented, right? And so
No, I understand, but what I'm saying is, in the source tree there will be 4,000 contexts, let's say.
mhm.
Okay. So now we have to filter that down. So, this one is documented, this one is a mistake, this one should be renamed, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We got to filter it down so that at the end of it, our users don't get bad autocompletes with stupid contexts in them, right? And yes, it's significant work to go through whatever it is. I'm guessing 4,000 different contexts, but that work has got to be done. So I'm just saying we can start it by looking at what are all the contexts mentioned.
I mean, I think there's an easy approach.
Yeah.
So there's a whole bunch of contexts that come out of building the MX files.
Yeah.
We can grab those programmatically at the end of the MX build.
Fine.
Right, and
those
those are what seed the internal exclusion list.
Right.
Okay, but
then the other set of things that I've seen, emails from Stephen about recently, I think they were all contexts that were coming out of packlets.
Okay.
Right,
So,
basically the goal for we've sort of added a mechanism where packlets can add themselves to the internal list, and maybe we will somehow, and there's been talk of maybe the packlet manager automatically does this, or
that's what I was going to suggest, that by default we change the packlet manager to blacklist things, and you have to specifically
in the packlet info file
say if it shouldn't be.
That's a good idea. Talk to Todd about it. All right. Maybe those two things will get almost everything. Okay, we need to move on because we've got some other stuff to cover today. Okay, so I think we're good with that, but let's make sure we take action.
All right. So, but yes, but we didn't actually discuss any of the things that were on this list. Okay, so there are two sort of. So one edge case is, should system be considered internal? And so this is an edge case because
I understand the issue. Right. I mean, in a perfect world, we would whitelist symbols that are we whitelist things that are intended to be user set, which are in guide pages about system configuration.
Not just derivative is not.
Okay, fine. There's a limited set that we could whitelist. In a perfect world, we would whitelist those. I think the default of blacklisting everything is okay, but I suggest that it would be good if we could whitelist some of them in the automatic setting for excluded contexts.
Right, except you notice the fundamental contradiction in what you've just said.
What?
That excluded context talks about which context to exclude, and you're talking about whitelisting specific symbols. And I don't know how you.
Okay, well, fine. I don't know how we do that. Okay, fine. But look, excluded context, as a first cut, excluding system seems okay to me.
Okay.
Except, is that going to have some consequence? If you exclude system in full definition, is that going to have a consequence for parallel computing and for the cloud deploy and so on?
Right. So that's why Jan. Well.
Okay, what's the answer to that?
I don't know the answer, which is why I was saying that's why Jan is here.
Okay, so Jan,
maybe,
can you speak to that?
And I'm here, if you let me speak, and I'm not sure if I have a full answer either, but I'm personally not too concerned about...
was the person who dealt with that stuff.
What's that?
It's not so much about how that stuff is built, it's really what you're using it for. Nobody will have the definite answer for that. But I'm personally not too concerned about that. If I deploy something to the cloud, I would not expect that to pick up these various overrides that are made for system symbols.
I don't agree with you. I think you would expect that. If you have a function that says, if you've defined a derivative and then you do something, then you cloud deploy something else, which depends on that derivative, you will be upset that that definition is not pulled along.
Right. That's what I'm worried about.
I know. I think it's a concern. Look,
Yeah.
personally,
I mean,
let me make
I would say it's even more concern in parallel computing.
Right. Let me make a practical suggestion. Let's not change this with 12.2. This is too late in the cycle. Let's change this at the beginning of the next cycle and see what happens.
Okay. So you're saying
don't change anything right now.
So we basically we change the default excluded context to be empty list for 12.2.
Okay, listen.
Look, Stephen, we've already made a change. So don't make a change.
When was the change made?
Just before the freeze.
Okay,
because it was supposed to be made 2 months ago, and due to miscommunication, it didn't happen until just before the freeze.
Let's back it out. Okay, it's too dangerous a change to make at this point in the cycle.
Okay,
let's make it for the beginning of the next cycle and see what happens.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm confused. I don't see that extended full definition of a symbol for which I've given it a derivative value reflects the derivative value. So I don't see that derivative would be broken by this change.
Okay, guys, it's really simple. It is too late in the cycle to make a change of this type.
Okay.
It has too many bizarre consequences in terms of how things get deployed. Let's not do it. It's not necessary. It's not been a disaster what we have right now. Let's not make that change and break a bunch of things. Let's make it at the beginning of the next cycle and see what happens.
Okay.
Okay, and let's move on. Geometric assertion.
Dan, are you here? No, he said he might have to step out for a moment.
Oh, sorry. I just finished up, but I was muted. So I was.
Then it's yours.
Right. Okay, right. Okay, can we crisply get through the rest of the stuff here, guys? I've got. Okay.
I sent you 3 inputs in chat. You can look, and then you see the problem.
You sent them in chat? No. I don't have them.
No, sorry.
So, okay, I don't know why we need, all right. I mean, the point is basically, I mean, I think everything we need to discuss is right here. I'm not sure why we need these examples, although if they will be useful, we can discuss them. Right now, geometric assertion just sits there.
Okay, so the question is, well, okay. So
this is in 12.2 it evaluates. If this is 12.2, it will evaluate.
Okay, that didn't evaluate in my 12.2. I don't know why. Then
we don't want the last one to happen because it loses all meaning once it has happened.
And well, I'm not sure. And
I don't think 3 could be 0, etc., etc., etc. They don't even.
Right.
No. I don't think any of these should evaluate.
Right, I'm with Itai on this. I think
just hold on. Let me understand the previous situation. The previous situation in 12.1 was none of them evaluate. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. So the next question is, we have assertions like this where we want them to evaluate. We want to be able to ask, are these things collinear, right? So
yes, but it's not obvious that this function is the right tool to do this.
I agree. Okay, I agree. But geometric assertion has many second arguments. It has a pretty complicated language, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So what you're saying is, so there are 2 questions. One is to have another function parallel to geometric assertion which evaluates. Another is to have a wrapper around geometric assertion.
Right. So we already have a wrapper around geometric assertion, which is geometric scene.
No, that's not a good answer. That's not a good answer.
Why is that not a good answer?
Because it's a ridiculous thing to determine whether 3 points are collinear. You say geometric scene of geometric assertion. It's crazy.
But in general, you won't know, right? The geometric assertion doesn't have all the information it may need, which you could supply via geometric scene. right? If all the points are concrete, then sure. Although I will point out we have collinear points now. So in fact, we have this function for this specific case.
Right, but what about, okay, so we have a function called linear points, but
right.
Now what about all the other things here? The answer that use geometric scene is not an acceptable answer. We need
right. Well, we talked about
linear points.
We talked about having a geometric solve that could.
Well, geometric solve is going into the function repository and is doing something slightly different. That's more for solving for a quantity out of the scene. Like you are given a geometric scene and you want to know a formula for some radius.
Okay. What would happen if we made reduce take geometric assertions?
Well, I think Adam would be unhappy is the short answer, right? I mean, it would, we could probably make that work, right? I mean, it wouldn't make sense over, right? Since the default domain, well, maybe it could interpret these as being automatically over the reals because it's geometric assertion.
Yeah, that's what I would suggest. Is that rather than having all of these functions, you know, is it parallel, is it perpendicular, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera,
reduce and not resolve?
I was thinking about resolve too. I'm not sure.
I think resolve is nearer in spirit.
Okay, well,
well, isn't resolve about resolving quantifiers, and we have no quantifiers here?
That's why I didn't say it. I initially thought resolve is the better concept, but then I thought, but it's specific to quantifiers. And then
I mean, I would have no problem with like simplify or full simplify taking these.
But often they get vastly bigger, so they're not simpler.
Well, then it would be function expand.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I think we could make function expand as a courtesy take these.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the main documented thing should probably be something like reduce. I think we should also look at, going forward, how many of these we actually want to turn into things like our, collinear points function.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think quite a few of the other, by the time these things have been being used for 2,000 years in Euclid, they probably are well established. Okay, so I think that's what we should do for this one. Okay, somebody talk to Adam and see whether he freaks out about this.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. So there was this hex string suggestion, and I don't think we need it because for one thing, we already have base encode, base 16, which does the, no space, no.
What is the objective here for hex string?
So it's basically to represent, to show, to convert it to binary data to string and use it in places where we show it to users. For example, info box or return as value.
Okay. And how do you want? What format do you want to use?
So so I need some options. For example, I'd like to have spaces or
between
uppercase, lowercase.
But between what?
Between two-letter chunks.
Right.
Spaces or columns. These are common things.
Okay. Well, so right now we have base encode.
Right. So base decode will handle all three of these. It'll take all three of these specifications.
Okay. So the issue is whether base encode will generate those as outputs.
Right. And the whole reason why we had a base encode rather than a base 64 encode was that we could have a whole zoo of different.
So let's start populating the zoo. We've got all kinds of exotic animals to put in it.
Yeah, but my claim is I don't want a zoo. I want a specific function with the options. And I looked at the code of base encode, and adding an option to this
But I don't think
function is
we want to
not-
add options, and I don't know why. I don't know why adding the option is better than just using the zoo. So we have a base 16 spaces and a
Okay,
base 16 colons.
Base 16 colons uppercase, base 16 colons lowercase.
Okay, well, what options would you propose to add?
So it's basically uppercase, lowercase, and separator.
Yeah, good luck. What do we have symbols for those? No. Right, so we're introducing a whole giant new thing for the sake of having uppercase letters.
No, we don't have an option, for example, for riffle, but it's just second.
A riffle? Why is riffle relevant?
Well, if you have chunks of strings, you can riffle with string of space. So
Okay, but look, let's be clear. By the time you're giving it complicated enough specification, you might as well just write a function. It's not exactly hard to do it.
yeah, it's one-liner, which I write all the time. So that's basically...
Okay, well, fine. But let's name the things that we want.
Mhm.
Right. So I forget. Right. So it defaults to uppercase. Right. So if we want to add right, we could have a base 16 lowercase. Right. That doesn't make sense for
Actually, the lowercase.
for base 64 and base
Does it
85 because they
default
use
to
upper and
lowercase
lower.
or not? Does it
What's that?
default to lowercase or uppercase?
It defaults to uppercase.
Is that the right thing?
It's what the WXF library does by default. I guess we can ask
Can do
Rob,
both ways. Yeah.
and we
Sorry?
can.
What do
There is
people
no-
usually do in base 64?
Well, base 64 uses both upper and lowercase letters, so there is no uppercase or lowercase.
So I'm sorry. So this is base 16 we're talking about.
Only base 16.
Only base
I've seen. I think the uppercase is more common, but I won't claim to have done a
Base 16.
exhaustive.
Yeah, in cryptography, it's all lowercase mostly. And sometimes...
I thought lowercase was the modern form. I thought uppercase was what people did when they were thinking about Fortran cards.
Yeah, pretty much.
I think it should be lowercase by default.
Well, that's I think an easy enough change.
I think we should make it lowercase by default. And what I think we should do is we should call it, I think all of the, okay, look, I think I'm suggesting it would be base 16 would be lowercase, no spaces. Base 16 upper would be
uppercase, no spaces.
Right. Base 16 spaces would be, well, actually, I think it should be base 16 pairs, base 16 colon pairs would be my suggestion. And base 16 pairs is the space one, and colon pairs is the obvious thing.
Yep.
Could it be list base 16 pairs, comma, delimiter?
Yeah, it probably could be.
That would make more sense, yeah.
Well, I think though colon pairs is a good thing to do, but I think we could have an additional variant, which is base 16 pairs delimiter. Seems reasonable to me. Why don't you implement and document, Konstantin?
Okay.
And I will send you this as email.
Mhm.
Okay, and we made it just in time here.
Okay.
All right. Talk to you all soon. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Thanks.
Hey, Michael, do you have a sec?